Good morning, everyone. Good morning. And this is a class. I'm coming to you live from the holy city of Kalkaska, Michigan. Mushki and I and the kids are up here for a month. Mushki is directing the Chabad Girls Teen Camp up here in northern Michigan, and we got over 50 girls, and I'm co-directing it with her. So I'm shuttling back up and down between up north. I finally have the classic Jewish excuse, right? What's the classic Jewish excuse? I'm up north. I'm up north for the summer. Okay, so I can finally say that. Up north for the summer. And so this is our first time trying to do this Zoom class from the northern Michigan Kalkaskan environment. So we're gonna have to learn if this is the right setting. This is trial one. If it works, you'll let me know. Then we'll do Tanya class on Monday from here, and all of that type of stuff. And dear friends, without any further ado, this week is chapter 3 of Pirkei Avos. That's going to be the Pirkei Avos for this Shabbos. And therefore, as we traditionally do, right, we're making a tradition out of this. Every week we choose one specific Mishnah to focus on, to hone in on, and to do that Mishnah justice. And, I just want to make a special thank you again to Shelley Schindler for being the impetus for this class. And it's really, really wonderful getting such beautiful feedback from it. So thank you for that. And just by the way, I upload all the classes online on my YouTube channel, and I sent out the links for the previous 2 classes yesterday. So if you ever miss a Pirkei Avot class, they're up online. And, it's actually very interesting. I told some of you guys this, but I put up my classes online, not so much because I'm looking to become a internet celebrity rabbi. But that's just, people ask for recordings. It's just a very convenient place to put it. Very recently, I've started getting a lot of fan mail, national fan mail. And it's quite unbelievable. I just got a check in the mail from a Jew who lives in Florida, and he just wanted to give me a thank you for the classes. He's listening to the Tanya class. He's listening to the Tanya podcast. He sent in a donation to Chabad in honor of I was like, I don't even know this guy. And just yesterday I got another email asking me for the Tanya handouts, because she's listening to the Tanya class on YouTube, and she wants the handouts. So I'm like, you know what? It's such wild times that we live in, that this little class over here, and it's not so little. We have like 25 people registered for the Pirkei Avot classes, but from this little nucleus over here, we're making larger waves. So it's always very special and very very gratifying, and it's quite humbling. So what can I say? It's very beautiful. All right. Well then. All right. Just hello to everybody who's still joining. Hello, Nancy. Hello, Mark. Hello, Evgenia. How you all doing? How was lunch yesterday, Mark? You guys did it in the end?
Yes. Without you, we definitely didn't have a rudder staring
at us.
All right,
wonderful. You got the traditional.
But it was good. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, dear friends. Chapter 3, I sent out the handout. We are studying this week the 7th Mishnah, the 7th paragraph in this week's Pirkei Avot. And let's read it, and we'll start unpacking it. Text 1 in your handouts is the Mishnah Avot, chapter 3, Mishnah 7, and let's read. And I want to really break down every single word over here. So as we always do, let's read it very, very carefully and give it the right, we'll analyze the precision, the precise wording. So let's read. Rabbi Elazar of Bartosa would say, give him what is his. For you and what is yours are his. As King David says, the verses in Chronicles, for everything comes from you, and from your hand we have given to you. That is the Mishnah. On a basic level, this is a Mishnah that captures and expresses the Jewish ethical view of charity, of tzedakah, of giving charity. But it's also a lot deeper than that. The Talmud is a commentary on the Mishnah. And we learn from the way the Talmud analyzes a Mishnah about how much precision and perfection there is in the precise wording of every single word of the Mishnah. The Talmud literally, the slightest minutia of a phrase choice, phrase construct, word choice is worthy of very, very, very even hair-splitting analysis. And that is really the attitude to the Mishnah. It was written in the form that very few words should capture and hold tremendous depth. This Mishnah is definitely one of those examples, and as we do in every single class. So let us start going into this Mishnah. So I want to first start with the context of the verse. King David says, "For everything comes from you, and from your hands we have given to you." King David was the one who initiated the construction of the very first Holy Temple. He was not the ultimate one to build it. It was his son, King Solomon, Shlomo HaMelech, who was given the gift of actually constructing and building the Holy Temple. But King David wrote up all the plans, the blueprints, and raised all the funds. And at the conclusion of the project, the plans are all written up, and they did one of Judaism's very first large-scale crowdsourced fundraising campaigns. Not the first, but one of the very earliest models. And he has all the money, he has gold, he has silver. And all of a sudden, King David is overcome with emotion. This is it. We've just done it. We are ready for the project. It's a very, it's a massive undertaking, and we're ready to build the Holy Temple. Ultimately, God told King David, you're not going to be the one to build it. Wait for your son, King Solomon, to do it. Because King David was a spiller of blood, because he waged battles and went to war, legitimately. He went to holy wars. He went to wars which were mitzvahs. But the moment that you shed blood, you have, you're not, it's not the right hands to build the Holy Temple. But in any case, King David, he raised all these funds, and he's just so overcome with a sense of humility. And he says, everything comes from you, God. So we have just raised the funds, which are really yours. From your hand, we have given back to you. He says, this is not like as if we gave money to God. He has this very, very humble feeling, an overwhelming feeling of just, this is really God's money that we don't have the gift to give back to God. That's what King David says. And that this verse and what Rabbi Elazar Partosa says, give him what is his, give God what is his. Because really you and what is yours are his. This is really the Jewish ethical view on charity. You see, in Pirkei Avos, we're not learning Jewish law, we are learning Jewish values. We are learning the values that drive Jewish law. So, what does Jewish law say about charity? Jewish law says how much charity you have to give. According to Jewish law, a minimum of 10% of your income goes to charity. Maximum 20%, that's the ideal. Ideally, 1/5 of all your money goes to charity, which is quite unbelievable. But minimum 10%, minimum 1/10. And Jewish law tells you how to give charity. But the ethics of our fathers gives us the attitude with which we give charity, which is already it's the moral attitude, the ethical attitude that we should have in our minds and our hearts. The Hebrew word tzedakah, in English, we translate it as charity, right? Tzedakah is charity. But charity is actually a very lousy translation to the word tzedakah. And it does a disservice to what tzedakah is in Judaism. Charity, what's charity? Charity means, when I'm being charitable, what does it mean I'm being charitable? It implies that I'm giving an undeserved gift. Right? If I'm paying somebody, that's not charity. That's not a gift. I owe somebody money. Okay. When I'm being charitable, I'm like volunteering. I'm voluntarily just giving up of my own money, of my own generous heart and spirit. And the only reason why this person or this organization is getting my money is because I decided to give money. But it's like, it's my choice. It's my act of charitable giving, of having a good heart. Tzedakah comes from the Hebrew word tzedek. What does tzedek mean? Tzedek means justice. Tzedek means righteousness, justice. It's a very different type of word. That's not charity. In Judaism, we don't give charity because it's so nice. And we don't give charity because I'm going to be charitable. I'm going to be generous. In Judaism, giving charity is justice. It is the right thing to do. It's not like a bonus. It's not voluntary. It's not like, I'm going above and beyond and giving away what's mine. We say, God gave you money, and this is why he gave it to you. He gave it to you for you to contribute. It's really his money, and he gave it to you for a purpose. And when you then give those funds to charity, to tzedakah, the way God asked of you to give it, you are simply doing justice. The example that one of the commentaries give is like this. A banker. Imagine you're a banker. Somebody gives you money. Somebody deposits money into your bank. And then they say, can you please wire this amount of money to this third party? And the banker does that. Did this banker just do charity? Did this banker just do something like above and beyond? Or is he simply, just doing his job, doing his duty? You're just doing what you got to do. So this Mishnah says that this moral attitude that is baked into the word tzedakah. Give God what is his. Really, it's all his. So when you give charity, you're simply giving it the way God wants you to give it, because ultimately it's his. That's the attitude. Pretty unbelievable attitude. There's a story. It's also printed here in your text, but I'll tell it to you outside. It's a story about one of the original Hasidic masters from the 1700s. His name was Rabbi Avraham Yehoshua Heschel of Apt, which was a town in Poland. And you maybe know of the more recent, the late Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who was his great-grandson, and also my great-uncle, by the way. What happened was, this was the original Rabbi Avraham Yehoshua Heschel. And then the family, in order to honor their great forefather, they took the family last name of Heschel. So he's called Abram Joshua Heschel. Okay, in any case, but that's a family name in our family as well. My uncle's is Avraham Yehoshua Heschel. Okay, so there's a Hasidic story about him, that he was a Hasidic Rebbe. He had many followers in the town of Apt in Poland and in other cities as well. He was a Rebbe later on in Mezhebush, which is in Ukraine. And he had some of his Hasidim were some wealthy businessmen, some wealthy merchants. And he once asked one of his wealthy Hasidim to give a certain specific sum to a certain cause. And that Chassid, he would usually fulfill his Rebbe's requests for charitable giving. But this time it was not a very convenient time financially. And he decided to ignore the Rebbe's request. It was a request. The Rebbe just simply asked, here's a tzedakah that I feel needs money. Can you please give towards it? And he declined the offer to give. And shortly afterwards, all of a sudden, his luck started plummeting. He started having financial, one bad thing happened after another. And financially, he started going down the drain. And he couldn't help but notice that it was exactly right after he turned down his Rebbe's request that he started losing all of his money. So he asked for an emergency meeting with the Rebbe. He said, Rabbi, was my sin this grave that my punishment had to be so severe? And now I have to lose my pants because I told you no to one request? He was complaining. What type of business is this? I have to lose everything? So the Rebbe said, this is not a punishment. There's no punishment involved. The Rebbe said like this. Let me explain to you what's happening over here. When my soul was destined to come down to earth, I was also allotted a certain amount of money for me to be able to do good with these financial means that I will have. But since I'm a Rebbe and I'm involved in Torah study and guiding people and teaching people, I don't have time to really deal with money. So from heaven, they've taken my money and they've distributed it between some of my Hasidim. So like that, I could tell them where to give charity. They'll give it. And that will be my charitable duty from heaven. We'll go through them. So I just asked you to give charity. You said no problem. From on high, they've just chosen somebody else to manage my finances from on high. It's not a punishment. There's no punishment here. It's a heavy story. It's a whole different attitude. Like, the money that we have, the gifts that we have, the financial success we have. That is God's way of saying, I'm entrusting you with a gift. And now it's our turn to say what Rabbi Elazar said. Give him what is his. Now, how can I take what God gave me and actually show God that I'm a trustworthy banker for his funds and that I'm going to pass it along the way he wants it to? My great-grandfather, my mother's father, he was very wealthy. He was a Holocaust survivor, and God blessed him with a lot of business success. And the Rebbe once told him that the only reason why God blessed him with my great uncle he established the very first Chabad on a college campus in Buffalo, New York. And he had absolutely no financial backing. He couldn't even fundraise from his community that he was servicing because they're all college kids. And my great-grandfather took it upon himself to single-handedly, bankroll the entire enterprise. His personal salary, every single program, the Chabad. I just want you to know the only reason why you are having so much financial success is because God sees what you are doing, and God is giving you the means to be able to give this tzedakah, which is an unbelievable thing to hear from the Rebbe. Like, straight out, this is the only reason why you're successful. But it's an attitude. And the real truth is, the commentaries say this is true about every single mitzvah. Don't be skimpy when it comes to a mitzvah. When it's time to do a mitzvah, you're lighting Shabbos candles, buy nice candlesticks. Do the mitzvah nicely. It's time to buy a mezuzah. You could buy different types of mezuzahs. You could buy a very baseline mezuzah, which is technically kosher, but just barely. Or you could buy a higher quality mezuzah. And the commentaries say when it's time to spend money on God, go all out. Don't be skimpy. Go even beyond your means. Because really, this is where God is giving you the opportunity to give him what is yours. As our sages say, you're putting up a mezuzah on the house. Who gave you a house? God gave you a house. Right? How did you pay for this house? You had money. Oh, you had money? Where did that come from? God gave you the money. So when you put the mezuzah up, that's your opportunity to show acknowledgement and to give thanks to God for the blessings in your life. Every single financial thing that we are able to give to God, goes within the purview of this Mishnah. Give him what is his with this attitude. But let's go even further. On first read, you read this Mishnah, give him what is yours, give him what is his, because what is yours is really his. And we have the verse from King David that, look, everything comes from you, from your hand we have given back to you. And the Mishnah strongly implies charity, giving money. But if you read the Mishnah, it actually doesn't say a word about money. The Mishnah is perhaps cryptically or more generally just says, give him what is his, because what is yours are his. It doesn't say your money is his. It says what's yours. And from here, our sages say that this attitude is not limited to just giving charity. This is a much larger concept. From charity, we learn it to all of life. I want to read text 4 with you. Such a beautiful text from the Tiferet Yisrael commentary on the Pirkei Avos. He says something so beautiful. He says, it would seem to me that this Mishnah is not just talking about charity, but is rather saying, if God has graced you with any quality or ability, such as wealth, physical strength, wisdom, a good memory, a beautiful voice, and the like, offer it to God by utilizing it for a holy purpose. What is yours? What do we have? Every person is given a talent. Every human being is given a strength. So some people, their strength is money. But everybody is rich and wealthy with something. Anything. And our job is to give that to God, to acknowledge that this is a godly gift and to return the favor. Use some of it for God. Give some back to God. You know, there was a rock band in Israel. One of them passed away by now. We're talking about in the 60s. They were called the Piamenta brothers. Piamentas. They were from Sephardic origin. And they were in the 60s. They were like real hippie style. They were in Israel. They were wild Israelis. And they had a rock band. One of them played the guitar. He was like a top guitar player. He was like literally one of the top 5 guitar players in Israel. And one was a flute specialist. And they would rock the bars of Israel. And they both decided to become religious. They became Chabad. And in their first meeting with the Rebbe, they said that we plan on dropping our musical career. So I said, why would you do that? God has given you a gift and you want to drop it? So he said, yeah, but you know, our music doesn't sound very Jewish. It's quite junky, our music. So Rebbe said, find a way to use your talents and use it for God. And the Rebbe said, please do not stop your career. Find a way to make good music. And he could look them up, the Piamenta brothers. They continued to write music and to put out CDs and albums back then, right? It was tapes and records, and to do concerts. And you know, that was the attitude. What do you have to give? What could you give to other people? It could be friendship. It could be friendship. A good voice, a good talent, wisdoms, physical strength, whatever you have, try to seek a way to be charitable in that sense. And in this sense, it also changes the attitude. Charity, we have a misconception as well, which is also a problem with the translation of the word charity. Charity always means money, right? When somebody gives a charitable gift, it always means money. No one says, I'm going to give you a charitable gift. I'll show up and give you my friendship for 5 hours. Like, you know, that's nice. But like somebody once told me, they were invited to a bar mitzvah in Israel, and the family was harassing them, want you to come, want you to come. She says, I don't think they want my presence. I think they want my presence. Understand? There's presence and there's presence. Okay. That's a pun. Okay. But in any case, the English word charity implies money. In Hebrew, the word tzedakah is much more encompassing. Tzedakah means the gifts that you have to share with others. I'll tell you, I once saw a letter from the Rebbe written in the late 50s to a professor, an Israeli professor, who was a immigrant from Russia, from the former Soviet Union. He was a professor in Israel, and he wrote to the Rebbe a letter, a very strong letter. I believe this is 1959, if I'm not mistaken. He writes that the biggest injustice in the world is financial inequality. And he wrote to the Rebbe with a little bit of too much ego, with a little bit of, you know, he wasn't right. You know, he wrote that as long as we're not addressing this largest injustice, all of our other efforts are a waste of time. He was basically telling the Rebbe, like, you know, you're busy hustling, trying to do this or that. You know, this was the early years, the infancy years of Chabad. Like, you know, you're ignoring the real problem. And he says financial inequality is the biggest problem, and he thinks that's what Chabad has to be focused on. You know, you understand he's coming from Russia, And he had a little bit of that communist socialist attitude of like, everybody has to have equal everything. And so the Rebbe wrote back to him an unbelievable letter. I wonder if it's translated in English because it's such a deep letter. The Rebbe wrote, first of all, that I take issue with your stance. I don't agree with you. And the Rebbe said, God made this world with a certain sense of inequality on purpose. Why would God do that? Because seemingly it's not fair. Some people prosper, some people don't. So simply because of fate, simply because of something which is out of your control, you don't have the same financial means as somebody else. It's not fair. So I would say like this. If everybody had everything, you know what that would mean? That would mean that nobody would ever need anybody. And we would all live solitary lives. What do I need you for? I don't need you. You can't give me anything because whatever you have, I have. Instead, God made this world as like a perfect puzzle. It's a perfect puzzle with millions of pieces. Every single person has a gift that the world needs and only they could give it. Everybody, no matter how wealthy they are, is also lacking something. So the Rebbe said, everybody is rich and everybody is poor. The only question is in what? Shelley's saying we need chaos. This is, I think, I don't know if that's this idea. Everyone's saying everybody's wealthy and everybody's poor. Everybody has what they could and need to contribute to society, and everybody has what they need society for. Everybody is needy. The Rebbe said, according to Judaism, if even one person isn't showing up and being philanthropic in their own way, the world is missing something. A puzzle piece isn't showing up. So the Rebbe said, I don't agree with you. This is part of God's design. The injustice is when people are not giving of their godly given gifts to the rest of society. And the Rebbe said, this has nothing to do with money. The Rebbe said, every single person is wealthy. God didn't make anybody pure. Everybody is wealthy and poor equally. The only question is in what? In what? Some people financially don't have what to give, but they're so wealthy in something else. The one thing I'll focus on is even friendship. Friendship is perhaps the one thing, especially in today's world, which is lacking the most. That's the real truth. The whole idea of simply taking somebody else in the community and giving them your friendship, not in a condescending way, but in a way, especially somebody who maybe feels a little bit vulnerable, just really be there for them. Want to hear something amazing? When I was a little kid, I had a classmate, and I once went to his house for a sleepover. And guess what I saw hanging on his wall? A picture of my great-grandfather. So I'm like, what is my great-grandfather doing on your wall? It's on my wall. Why is it on your wall? She said, I don't know. So I asked his father, what's it? She said, your great-grandfather was like a father to me. He came from a broken home. And he just, his teenage years, his young adult life, before he got married, he said, I ate by your grandparents' house every single Shabbos. So how could I not have a picture of him up? He walked me to my chuppah. It was pretty amazing. Like, my grandfather, he's my grandfather. But like, here's somebody else who cherishes his life. It says, this is a father to me. And I think that's something which is so, that's a form of giving. That's a form of wealth that all of us have. Who could we really be there? Who could, everybody needs a friend. In my opinion, the number one reason why people fall in life, the number one reason why people fall into depression, why people just lose the spirit of life, don't show up for life, why they're sad and despondent, the number one reason is that they don't feel that anybody cares for them. No one's looking out for them. The greatest gift that we could give to somebody is simply knowing that somebody cares for us, somebody's taking care of us. We could call somebody for advice. We can call to cry on somebody, just simple as that. So this is what the mission is saying. It's a gift that God gave you. If you are somebody who has the gift of friendship, who has the gift of wisdom, who has the gift of anything, give that back to God. Give that back in a holy way and find a way to give it back, and don't be skimpy there. That's a form of charity. So it's money, and the commentaries say it's really everything. Give him what is yours. One last point before I want to focus on something very deep as we conclude today. One last point over here is, if you look in the Mishnah, I just look at the words of the Mishnah. I want to point out the specific words over here in text 1. And in the English translation here is not perfect. And I'm going to point out to you an example of where English translations, no English translation is ever going to be perfect, because Hebrew is just such a tight language. So just look at this. Rabbi Elazar of Bartosa would say, give him what is his. That's not what the Hebrew says. The Hebrew reads, give him from what is his. It doesn't say ten lo shelo. It doesn't say give him what is his. It says ten lo mi shelo. Give him from what is his. And the commentaries point out the gift of God, that when God gives you money or other gifts on loan, so to speak, unlike a bank where you have to give back all the money, God lets you keep so much of your gift. So when God gives you money, it doesn't say give 100% away of it. He lets you keep 80%, 90% of it. He says, go and use it and have a good time and spend on yourself. So the commentaries say, look how great God is, that when he gives you a gift, he only asks for some of it back in return. But most of it, it's Misha, only give back some of it back to him. But so much of it is a gift that we end up being able to keep, and we should be thankful also for that opportunity. That when God gives us a gift, it's not just for the world, but God gives us so much commission of it as well. This is the general attitude of this Mishnah, right? That charity is not giving voluntarily. It's not giving because I'm a great guy. It's giving because this is what God has entrusted us with. And God has simply wants us to pass it on to where it is needed as it is.
I have a question,
Yes, Mark.
and that is free will. In this mission here, it's like for everything comes from you, and from your hand, we have given to you. But where does free will play in this gift that you're receiving from God?
It's actually very funny you're saying that, because free will is as you're saying, is actually is one of the topics that the commentaries touch upon in regards to this Mishnah. And I'll actually use your question as the springboard for my next point, which is we're getting into a little bit of a ethical conundrum here, a little bit of an ethical paradox. Give him what is his, because whatever is yours is really his. So whose is it? Is it God's or is it yours? It's the Mishnah seems to be saying both. The Mishnah doesn't take a side on this issue. The Mishnah doesn't say give him what is his, because really everything is his. The Mishnah clearly says for you and what is yours. So the Mishnah clearly says it is yours. It's a dilemma. Which one is it? It seems that both are true. It's ours, but it's also God's. But even when it's God's, it's still ours. As if both happen at the same time. There is one of the commentaries give an example, a real life example of where this conundrum came out to play. There was once a man who lived, back in the shtetl. He was sued by the local court to pay a certain amount of money. And the only way out of paying the money is if he would swear and sign that he didn't have those funds. So if this guy would swear, a Jewish guy, that he doesn't have the money, then the court will let him off the hook. The problem is he had the money. So he went to the rabbi of the town with this Mishnah and says, look, it says it's really God's. So if so, I could swear that I don't have the money, because really all my money is really God's. So and the rabbi said, no. The rabbi said, the same Mishnah says it's yours. It's yours, but it's also really God's. But in a certain way, both are true at the same time. So how do we kind of make sense of that? And here we get into also the free choice thing. But to be honest, Mark, I'm not gonna get really into free choice right now. It's a larger discussion. But I'll just tell you like this. We're talking here about our possessions, the money that we have, the gifts that we have. Give him what is yours. Give him what is his, because really what's yours is really his. There's an unbelievable teaching in the Talmud. In the Talmud, there's a whole discussion about what happens before a child is born. The 9 months of the gestation of the fetus, of the embryo into a fetus, there's also 9 months of spiritual gestation that parallel the physical process, the biological process. The soul is being developed and assuming its identity. It's being given its identity. It's being given its mission. And specifically, the ninth inning begins 40 days before the baby is born. That's D-Day. D-Day is 40 days before. And there's an entire process. The soul enters the heavenly court, and the heavenly court makes a lot of determinations right then and there. For example, who is this soul going to marry? 40 days before we were all born, our soulmate was destined, was chosen for us. What are going to be your talents? What are going to be your strengths? Are you going to be tall? Are you going to be short? Are you going to be rich? Are you going to be poor? One of the things that's determined 40 days before you are born, you can open up the Talmud yourself. What house you're going to own. Are you ready for this? What? It is possible that you are living in a house that wasn't even built when you were born. The Talmud says what house you will own is predetermined 40 days before you were born. What field you're going to own. You know, in today's, what business are you going to do? What business are you going to own? What are you going to do? You know, the house, do they determine which car I'm going to own? It's like, so if you think about it, if you say that you're shidduch, you're bashert, your soulmate is determined before you're born, that makes sense. That I could get behind. But what house? Who cares? Just a house. But what we see here is that Judaism sees our relationship with our possessions very differently than the mundane way we conventionally look at it. I want to read this next text with you. Text 6, also from the Talmud. Text 6, and the Talmud addresses and comments on the verse in Genesis. It says, Jacob remained alone. Jacob is traveling with his family. Jacob has 4 wives, many, many kids, 12 tribes plus many daughters, and a lot of cattle, a lot of property, a lot of servants. He crosses them all over the river. They're traveling. But then the Torah says he goes back to the other bank of the river. He crosses the river and he remained there alone. So the Talmud says, said Rabbi Elazar, he remained behind to retrieve some small jugs. Here we see that for the righteous, their possessions are dearer than their own body. Jacob went back because a few little jugs were left behind, and he wanted to go get them because he valued them so strongly. Again, we're seeing the same theme. Judaism sees our relationship with our possessions very differently than the more coincidental way that we look at it. I look at it that way. The car that I own, I own it. It was just, you walk into a lot, chose it, you walk out with it. The whole thing didn't take up more than an hour. So why did I get this car, not that car? Because I walked into this lot and this dealer and whatever, I got this thing. Judaism looks at it very differently. I want to read this next text with you, which is especially from the perspective of Kabbalah and Chassidus. Text 7, from the teachings of Rabbi Yisrael, the Baal Shem Tov. He says, this is a great principle. With everything that a person wears or eats, or any utensil that a person uses, they are utilizing the spiritual vitality that object contains. For without that spirituality, the thing would not have any existence. Contained therein are sparks of holiness that belong to the root of that person's soul. And when the person makes use of that utensil or eats that food, even when it's to serve their bodily needs, the person rectifies these sparks, because they will then serve God with the energy and empowerment their body received from that garment or food or other object. In simple English, you know what this means? It means your soul has a very specific DNA, right? It has a very specific trace, very specific fingerprint. There are the objects that we come into contact with. My phone that I own, the computer that I own. This is not incidental. This physical computer actually has my spiritual DNA on it. It is made for me. Every single resource, every single blade of grass, every resource in this world belongs to a soul. And that plan was put into place even before you were born. That all those connections of what your soul has to come into contact with happens before you were born. And there's something very deep, the relationship between us and our physical properties. Every piece of clothing we own, the house we own, the car we own, every dollar we own. These are our gifts. They're destined for us. They're part of our soul. They're part of our identity. And the Mishnah says, on the one hand, they're God's. On the other hand, they were personally entrusted to you personally. This is your mission. Only you could do it. Only your soul can unlock the gift that these resources are meant to bring to the world. And in that sense, there's something very, very personal about every single thing that we own. And God hands them off to us. This is your specific, this is your personal stuff. So both are true at the same time. They are God's, they are ours. And Rabbi Elazar of Partosa, the Pirkei Avos, is teaching us that when we interact with the world, when we have gifts, when we have resources, physical resources, money, we have to have this attitude. These are really God's belongings. God entrusted them to us with a mission. And we have to have that attitude of giving, of using, of showing up for our purpose. So, dear friends, I want to conclude with a short story and 3 specific takeaways from today's class. And it's not a true story, of course. It's like it's a metaphor to bring out this point. And it could be you've heard this from me before. I love this little story. The story goes that there's a man, he's driving down the highway. He's having a pretty lousy day. And just life's not working out for him. He's just not feeling happy. So he opens up his how do you call it? His roof window, his right? You could open up the window there and get some cold air coming from the top. So he opens it up, pushes a button to slide it back, and he looks up and he says, God, what would it cost to get a little bit of happiness? A little bit of happiness. What would it already cost? And all of a sudden he hears a voice coming back. He says, well, it's God, and it's your lucky day. I'm in a good mood. I'm game. What do you got? What do I got? He's like, yeah, what do you got on you? He's like, I don't know, I've got $20. So God says, all right, $20 and I'll give you happiness. So he says, God, that's amazing. Yeah, $20, that's a bargain. He says, God, just, let me ask you a little favor. $20, I'm running out of gas right now. I need the $20 for when I get to the gas station, or else I'm going to run out of gas. Yeah, I'll give you the $20 tomorrow. So God said, one second. 20, but you're going to fill up gas. So you own a car too? He says, yeah, I've got a car. So God said, okay, well then the deal is $20 and your car. So he says, God, if I give you my car, I can't get to work. So God said, whoa, you've got a job? You've got a job. God said, all right, happiness will cost you $20, your car and your job. He says, God, you can't do that to me. If I don't have a job, how can I support my family? No, that's not what he says. Sorry. I just butchered the story. He says, God, if you take away my job, I'm not going to make any money. I won't be able to pay my mortgage. The God says, mortgage? Oh, there's a homeowner over here. God said, all right, half this is going to cost you $20 your car, your job, and your home. He says, God, my home? Where's my family and kids going to live? My wife and kids. So God said, you got a wife? You've got kids? Half is going to cost you $20 your car, your job, your house, and your wife and kids. And this guy already knows by now to just shut up. He's just getting himself into more trouble. So God says, no, we've got a deal. So he says, yeah, we've got a deal. So God says, all right. $20 are not yours, they're mine. The car you're driving, it's not yours, it's mine. The job, not yours, mine. The house, not yours, mine. Your wife and kids are not yours, they're mine. Now listen, I'm giving you $20 right now. I'm going to give you a car. I'm going to give you a job. I'm going to give you a house. I'm going to give you a wife and kids. But they're not yours, they're mine. I'm giving them to you, but they're not yours, they're mine. I want you to use them the way you think I want you to use them. I want you to treat all of them the way you think I want you to treat them. And God said, and that's happiness. That's the story. That's happiness. There's 3 messages that I want to conclude today's Mishnah with. Number 1, when we give with humility. We don't give with ego. We don't give as if we're the biggest, God's greatest gift to mankind. Giving is a very humble act. We realize that we're given a gift. We realize that we are fulfilling our duty of giving, of stepping up into our role of what God wants of us. And it's a very humbling feeling. Giving charity is meant to be a very humbling activity, not one of like, wow, I just gave you charity. Now I need you to do this for me. Or, now I feel good about myself. Look at this. I'm such a great guy. It's a whole different attitude. It's one of being very. Number 2, we learn from the Mishnah, we give even when it's hard. It's not a personal choice to give charity. It's not like, if I'm in a good mood, if I got extra cash, if I'm not a little bit tight this month. Giving is something which is, it's very important. In a certain way, it's not a personal choice. It's justice. And justice has to happen whether we're in the mood, whether we like it, whether we're happy about it. And even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's inconvenient, we have to give. Again, charity, but as well as every other gift. Show up even when it's hard. And number 3, give with a sense of purpose. When we are living, when we are giving, we have to realize that this is tied into the very identity of our soul. These are the gifts that God gave us. These are the physical resources that God gave us. Only my soul can do this purpose. Only my soul can activate the purpose within all these circumstances and all of these physical objects that I own. And to live with that certain sense of purpose. Everything that I have is a gift to be utilized in a certain way. Give him what is his, because you and what is yours are really his. And dear friends, with that, we conclude today's Mishnah, chapter 3. And as always, I want to encourage you tonight and tomorrow to take a Pirkei Avos and study chapter 3 of Pirkei Avos and let its insight, the fatherly guidance of our sages, enter and touch our heart and mind. And with that, I want to wish you all a wonderful Shabbos. We will see you all next week, Friday, for chapter 4.
I like your idea of everyone equates charity to money, but I think the unsung heroes of charity is the time and that you put into doing the charity.
It's so true.
It's that.
True.
Yeah,
That's
let me
what
just
Deborah's
write a
writing
check.
about.
I'll be done.
It's so true. It's the unsung heroes. You're 100% right.
Av is father, Avot is
Right. Charity is not
Thank
just money.
Thank
There's so much. Every
Maybe
person. That's what remember. Every single person is a philanthropist. The only question is if we know what our gift is, if we are aware how wealthy we are. And the Rebbe would always demand that of people. How are you giving to people? People would be like, I'm not a big community activist. I'm just a little nobody. And they would say, no, everybody has to give. Everybody could give something somewhere.
You know, Rabbi, it seems
Yeah.
that we can start by knowing that God gave all of us our own strengths and gifts, and look at, and they might be odd. It might be something like, I don't know, like being able to walk long distances, and we have to look, and this almost encouraged us to look inside and say, okay, what gifts did God give me? And from there we can say, then how can I give it to, share it? That's the beauty of this
Exactly.
particular.
That's beautiful. Yeah, exactly. To realize we have a gift, try to identify what that is, and then we could be in a position of giving. It's also to be vulnerable, by the way. What Rebbe also wrote is we have to know what we are lacking and where we need our friends to help us, our community, because that's everybody is lacking. Everybody needs something. So everybody's giving, everybody's receiving, and the Rebbe said that's a healthy society. A healthy world is where there's a constant give and take. Everybody's giving and everybody's also receiving. And there's that beautiful loop of everybody being connected with each other. It's a very deep idea. So Rebbe very strongly disagreed with this professor it's a different form of equality. It's a very, very unique niche Jewish spin on it. It's not a spin on it. It's the Jewish it's the Jewish version, the Jewish vision.